they kind of leave the walls of their house. And then, if they're in school, what are the cleaning protocols? How are they going to make sure that they're actually cleaning and sanitizing between kids? And what are the new procedures? There's going to be a lot of changes, whether kids go back in person or virtually. And, how do we adapt to that? Along with these concerns are, the big question is, do I send them back? Do I keep them home? Do I change schools? Do we choose virtual all year? There's so many things weighing on parents' minds. So I'm going to walk through now a couple of things that I've recommended to families and hopefully can be helpful to some of you as well. So the number one thing I would recommend is to work with your school. Obviously, this, again, unprecedented times, districts have had a little bit of time to prepare over the summer, but this is really not something that, was probably in their long-term catastrophe plans or anything like that. Because when we closed down in the spring for that extended spring break that we all kind of assumed would get extended longer and longer, we had no idea what fall would look like. And I think, the thought was we would be back, in the summer, we'd figure things out and then school would resume as normal. That's not really the case. And the schools are having to make really hard decisions as well as families. So you definitely want to work with them. Develop a list of questions, concerns, and expectations that you have. For, me as a parent, it's how are you cleaning? What are you going to do to make sure that kids are limiting exposure to each other? I have a toddler, how is he going to keep things out of his mouth? Or if he's putting them in his mouth, how do I know it's clean? Or how do I know that if you clean something and you put it down, he's not picking it right back up with, Clorox on it or something in his mouth? What's the drop-off procedure? What's recess going to look like? What's lunch going to look like? Any concerns that you have, how do I know that I can trust that other parents are going to follow the rules? How do I know that the school's really going to follow the rules? I know that, wherever you stand on the mask issue, it's something that was mandated in the state of Ohio. And if you go to the grocery store, it's not really enforced. I mean, not that there's anything people can do about it, but it's one of those things where how are these things going to be enforced at the school? And then also as far as your expectations. So, and this is before you even discuss with the school, like as a family, what are your expectations? You want your child to continue to learn, to develop their skills. You want them to socialize. You want them, do you want them to learn something specific? What you want for your child at school year, what your expectations are of the school. I expect that the school will take the children's temperature. I expect that the school will send kids home if they're sick. I expect that my child will be sent home if they're sick. And then you're also, something that's not in here, but I also like to tell my families to do is to write out a few things that you're excited about or happy about. I know that sounds really hard right now when we don't know what's going on, but for me, for my son, he hasn't been in daycare since March. I'm excited that he is going to see other kids and that he's going to get, a break out of the house where he's been holed up for a few months. I'm excited that, he's going to get back into a routine. So even though it's scary for me to send him, I'm trying to look at the things that I can look forward to as well. And it can be one or two little things, but really something that let's try and pull something good out of these changes. Once you have all that worked out, I would say to contact your teacher or principal or whoever your point person is at your school and bring up your specific concerns. So use those questions, use those, the expectations that you have to open up a conversation. Your child is going to be different than every other child that's there. Every child is going to have unique concerns. Maybe your child has asthma, or something we see as kids are afraid sometimes of the masks, especially the little ones. So that's something that we knew might be the case. At work now we have to wear the masks and face shields, and kids don't like that. So that might be something where a parent has asked us if we have to wear it. So just bring up things that might be specific to your child. Kids are very clingy, or if they're, they don't like to be close, or they're going to have other needs. You want to make sure that that is something the school is on board with. And of course, only share, what you're comfortable sharing with school. I know that you don't always want to share every single thing, but try to work with them and let them know your specific concerns about your child. You're going to want to ask them to clarify their policies. I know right now a lot of schools are, they're planning the best they can, but in doing so, they're kind of throwing a lot of rules and policies and procedures out very quickly, and none of them have really been tested. So if you have questions about drop-off, or if you have questions about what happens, you know, if someone develops symptoms during the day, ask those. Ask for descriptions. Or one of our families, the school said that if you take any time off to go on vacation, you have to quarantine for 14 days. So what does that mean? Does it mean if you miss 1 day or 2 days and you have to stay home? Those are the types of questions that I would say, you know, to clarify, make sure that you're all on the same page. And then find out how you can support the school. You know, can you find out if they're going to be doing a lot of hand washing, if they're going to be doing a lot of foam and a lot of hand sanitizer, sorry, I couldn't think of the word. So are they going to be doing the actual sinks, or are they going to be doing the hand sanitizer? Is that something you can practice at home? Are the kids going to be, you know, enforced to wear the masks? I know in the city of Cleveland, they said kids 2 and up have to wear masks in public. So is that a realistic expectation? Sorry, the computer's jumping all over the place. So you really want to know, you know, what the school needs from you as a parent. And I know that sounds like we're already doing so much as a family, we're already doing so many extra things, but it really helps show that you're willing to work with them. And hopefully they're willing to work a little bit more with you. And the last thing I have been working with on families is don't assume that questions that you have already been brought up to the school. This happens every day where we'll have a new policy or procedure come out, and one of my staff will ask me a question about it, and it's not even something I've thought about because it's something so new and it's something so specific to them. So I'm really grateful for that when they bring those up. And I don't want families to think that they can't ask a question, or they will feel stupid asking a question or anything like that, because this is really new for everybody. So just assume that, you know, if it's not answered in an email, or you haven't been told it and you still have a question about it, maybe no one's asked, maybe no one's brought it up, and it's not even on the radar. So make sure that you bring those questions up. Now, going back to school in person. This is going to be a lot of change. If your child is going back in person for, you know, full time, half time, they're doing a hybrid of in-person, virtual, no matter what, it's not going to look the same as it has previously. There's going to be people wearing masks and shields and goggles and other PPE. The kids are going to be really spread apart. Some schools are doing one-way hallways. Some schools are changing the drop-off routine. So everything is going to be a little different. And you're going to want to prepare your children for that. You know, and this is going to be, you know, how you prepare them is going to be different for every child. But for younger kids, maybe a social story, or, you know, give them a new schedule. See if you can get pictures of the signage that they're going to be using in the school to indicate one way. For older kids, just talk to them about it. You know, kids understand a lot more, I think, than we give them credit for, but we always want to make sure that we're trying to be open and honest and transparent. And things that we tell them today might not be the same, you know, that might not be the same plan tomorrow. So just be prepared to kind of update them as we go. You're going to want to be proactive at home. Like I said, you know, practicing washing hands or using hand sanitizer appropriately. You might want to have, if kids are going to be wearing masks to school, you're going to want to have, you know, a place for clean masks and dirty masks. So maybe you're teaching them what to do when they come home. You want to have them practice, you know, putting the mask on and off if they're going to have to wear it. Teaching them to cough into their arm, those types of things. Make sure that, you know, if you want your children to change when they come home from school, or, you know, before they go in the house and play, wash their hands, make sure you're setting up those routines at home. And then, you know, prepare the house. If you are doing some sort of hybrid model, we'll talk about this a little bit more when we go into virtual. You're going to want to set, you know, designated areas. Maybe you have designated areas for their backpack, or, you know, the shoes that they're wearing to school, or the lunchbox. So things that normally, you know, and if you're here at my place, you would come home and throw it, you know, on a chair or a bench or on the floor. Maybe you want to keep the things that are going back and forth to school in a separate place. So just kind of think about those areas in your house. Continue to like wipe down and sanitize those high touch surfaces. So doorknobs, anything, any buttons or anything like that, just things that get touched a lot, because now if your child is going to school, they're in and out of the house, they're going to bring any germs at school back home with them. Again, know your school's policies. We've run into this because we do have some kids back in their summer programs where the parents are sending them, even though the school says like you can't come with a cough or you can't come with a fever, and they got their 2 or 3 year vaccines and now they have a fever, and the school is sending them home, and they're calling us to try and call the school to say, hey, they can come, which is not something that we do. But just make sure that your school's policies and know when to keep your child home. This is unfortunately going to be one of the big changes, I think, is that if we would send a child to school, I don't want to say sick, but it's cold and flu season, sniffles, a little bit of a cough, something that isn't super contagious, people tend to send their kids to school, and that's just not going to be something that's typically allowed anymore. So just know what your school's rules are. And then just keep an open line of communication with them. This is going to be different for everybody, teachers, students, parents, educational aides, speech therapists, everybody that's going to be there. So make sure that you're having those open lines of communication. Make sure that you understand, from your school, how will you be alerted if your child was exposed, or what is considered an exposure. Just make sure that you're continuing to ask those questions and stay in contact with your teachers. For those going back virtually, this is going to be really different as well. So when school stopped in March, it was a big transition because everything, in not just our kids' lives, but everybody's lives kind of totally stopped. Yes, a lot of us were still working, but it was different. Everything looked different. So that was a huge transition. Then they transitioned to those virtual services, and that was a big transition. So now when kids would normally go home and that was their time to relax or their place where they were, getting comfortable, and it wasn't really a workspace. Now it's their home and their workspace. And if you think about for adults as well, when I moved my office here temporarily, it was kind of like I never left work. So kids have to be thinking the same type of thing. So that was a big change. They were probably expecting to go back, but now they've developed this new routine, right? They're home, they do the virtual services. Maybe they're getting services in the summer, maybe they're not. But now in the fall, a lot of schools are switching to virtual, hybrid, or giving the parents the choice to choose. So the first thing that, again, I recommend is working with your teachers. Know what their expectations are for participation, for student engagement, and let them know, what your concerns are about the virtual delivery of service. You're going to want to set reasonable expectations, and I cannot stress this enough. So just because, class is being presented virtually does not mean that every kid's going to be able to jump on and participate in an hour or 2 hours worth of teaching and be engaged and get value from it. So if you know your child better than anybody, what they're able to do, see if you can work with your teachers and maybe build up to a longer time. See what you can do to engage them in a session. We have a student that likes, most kids have a preferred video that they like or something on YouTube. So we encourage the school, and this worked really well, to start the session by showing the video, kind of engaging them, giving them reinforcement for coming to the session and participating, and then kind of going into the work and then building up from there. You're also going to want to build in breaks. It's really hard to sit in front of the screen for a few hours. If any of you have been working, virtually or remotely, you probably know that it's not easy to sit in front of the screen. So when we're talking about, kids and young adults who maybe already have limited attention span, it's going to be really hard. So make sure that you're building in breaks and reinforcing them for doing their work. It's hard. Another thing that we recommend is to designate an instructional area. So, you're at home, and today maybe you're sitting on the iPad on the couch doing work, and maybe tomorrow you'll be sitting at a table. Or we've had kids join appointments when they're driving in the car to, grandma's house or something like that. But it really helps set consistency and routine if you have a work area that is, the school space. So it could be, it doesn't have to be a designated classroom or anything like that, but just maybe you sit at the same table, or maybe, we always sit in the kitchen, we get to pick our seat. Something that says it's time to go to work versus I'm at home and I can kind of lounge around and do what I want. Just like when kids are learning to ride a bike, this is going to be hard at first. And I know that we've had a little bit of practice in the spring, but I think the expectations from schools have changed. Teachers are going to be expected to provide more synchronous, so live teaching, and it's going to be a little bit different. So when a kid learns to ride a bike, if they're falling off and losing their balance, we don't get angry and reprimand them. We give them words of encouragement, tell them to keep going. We reinforce what they've done well, and you're going to want to do the same thing for school, virtual or in person. It's going to be hard and different, so you want to make sure that you're really reinforcing positive things that you're seeing and you're being encouraging. Just think about how hard it is for you as a parent to kind of deal with all these changes, and it's a lot harder for our kids who don't necessarily understand everything that's going on. We don't even really understand what's going on a lot of the time now. And then again, ask for clarification when needed. So confirm times for live sessions, confirm email addresses or contact information. Just make sure you know what the schedule is and who you can get in touch with if you have any questions. So the big question then is, should they go back? This is a really personal question to every family, and it kind of goes to what the family is comfortable with. So if you have somebody who's at high risk, lung problems or something like that living in your home, it's going to be a lot different of a conversation to see. Maybe your comfort level isn't as high as someone else's. You have to decide what works for your family. Something else to consider is that I know this is just kind of across the board, a lot of jobs shifted and a lot of, the way we do our jobs changed. So maybe in my case, I don't know if I would send him back or not, but my husband works and I work, so he is going to go back to daycare. Those are things to consider. That's what's going to work for our family. I know that the hybrid model is really hard because that means 2 days a week your kids might be in school and then the rest of the week they might be at home. So how do you work that out with your employer? So again, this is all very family dependent. The CDC has, and I put a little snippet of here on it, and I can share the website when I share everything at the end, the back to school decision-making tool. So what it is, it's kind of like a PDF that you can click through and you answer the questions like to your comfort level and your preferences, and it gives you recommendations based on that. Obviously, it's not, a decisive tool telling you what to do, but it's kind of letting you know like what is important to you and maybe highlighting some questions that you didn't think about before. The CDC actually has a whole section on their website about back to school and, what are the pros and cons, why is classroom instruction important, but why is it important to stay home? So I think that that's a really nice tool that's out there for parents to kind of help them, guide their decision making. No matter what, you want to make sure that you can keep some sort of routine. So with the hybrid model or all virtual or back in person, you want to make sure that it's something that you can manage. And then I don't even want to say worst case scenario, but if your child's on an IEP, you as a parent have a right to request an IEP meeting at any time, and the school has to respond to it. So if you have, further questions or you're having a really hard time making the decision, they can't make that decision for you, but you can request a meeting to sit down and kind of formally talk about what things will look like for your child. That kind of leads us into this. Is it the right decision? Did I make the right decision for my child? Did I make the right decision for my family? And there really isn't a right answer. So every decision we make comes with uncertainty. And right now, uncertainty, unfortunately, is the only thing we can be certain about. In February, we knew what was going on. We knew there was this virus, but we didn't really know the magnitude of it until it kind of hit us closer to home. And ever since that happened, it's been every day something has been changing. And I know that, we go through waves of in the beginning, it was every day there was a new policy, something changed. And now we're kind of, we just wait on the facts and see what's coming at a slower rate, but that still means we don't know. And that's really hard for the school decision because a lot of schools have said they're going to follow the color code of the county map of Ohio. So if you're a blue county or is it blue or purple, you will be all virtual. If you're red, then it would be hot. Some are doing hybrid. And then if it's yellow or orange, it would be all in person. So that's hard because what if, today you're orange and tomorrow you're red? So that's a lot of changes and we don't really know what's going on. Not knowing and not having an answer if you made the right decision or not is, it's hard and it leads to a lot of stress and anxiety and a lot of fear because you don't know what the outcome is. You might think like me, is it the right decision to send him? Yes, he needs to learn with his peers and, he needs to be in that environment, but what if he gets sick? So a lot of this leads to kind of that uncertainty. So try to remember that everything is different. School is going to look different. Work looks different. your home might look different. Maybe you have an office set up at home, or maybe, you have a lot more kids at home all day. Maybe the way that you're interacting with your family is different. I know for us, it was spending a lot more time with our son, which was really fun. But, I don't know how they do it at daycare with they have a curriculum for, 1 and 2 year olds, and that's incredible to me. So it's kind of like learning how to do things within your new setup. Things in the community are different, right? We can't just go out to places without thinking about it anymore, without at least, knowing the risks in the back of our head. And we always know the risk because we see people out with masks and practicing social distancing and that. So everything is different, including expectations. So it's hard because, it's hard to even think back that only 6 months ago we were going about things normally. And now it's hard to know, like, when will we feel that way again? Or when will it be like that again? And everyone kind of talks about this new normal. And that's, it's hard for adults. It's hard for kids. It's really hard for kids. Everyone is responding to everything differently. And everything that has happened is different for everybody. So it's not like it's different for me because I had to work remotely for 2 months, and it's not different just for the kids because they had to go virtual for school. It's different for every single person because after we shut down, we kind of never went back to the way it was before. And I think that's what we all want eventually, or whatever the new normal is, but just keep in mind that it's different for everybody. So everyone has, a little bit of that fear, a little bit of that stress, a little bit of that anxiety. What I would encourage families to do, and this is the hardest part, right, is to, someone at work was like, oh, a parent was like, we just need to get over it. And it's like, we need to get over things, but we also need to deal with them. We can't just move past it because our whole lives are different. And we're trying to care for a child with special needs makes it 10 times more difficult because they might not understand what's going on. And they have a lot of additional things that you have to take into consideration. So don't worry about being perfect. Nobody really has parented through a pandemic like this in recent times. So we're all making mistakes, and that's okay. If we make the beginning, people were wiping down their groceries or wiping down the boxes that they were getting from Amazon or storing their mail for 3 days before they opened it. And some people weren't. That's okay. Nobody really knows, what the right thing to do is, but don't stress about trying to make everything perfect. It's okay to feel that fear or anxiety. We don't know what's going on, and it's not, we don't want to let it overtake our lives, but it's hard. When we first shut down and we were in that full shutdown for 2 to 3 weeks, in March into April, I think it actually was like maybe March, right after St. Patrick's Day, March 23rd is when I think our office closed because we're inside of a rec center. So with the state mandate, that rec center had to close. That was really hard to kind of feel isolated and alone and not really know where to turn because I always see my family and I didn't have them to call and talk to. And so to not be anxious then would be incredible. And if you can do it, that is amazing. But it's okay to feel that a little bit. We just need to prepare ourselves for change. It's hard to say, but we might not ever go back to the way things used to be before. If, at the very least, it means that we're all a little bit more aware of, washing our hands and being safe around people that we don't really know. But what we can do is try to control the things that we can control. And this is something that I will say over and over again. We can't control what's going on out there, but we can control a few things that are going on in our house. We can set up those learning areas, try and add structure. It's hard now because we're not, people aren't just going out and doing everything, but we told families, pick a special activity to look forward to every week. So we had a child that really liked superheroes. So his parents decided that they were going to do kind of a game night, and everyone would dress like superheroes. So he put on his Spider-Man costume, and I think mom and dad ended up making masks, and it was something that they could look forward to. And it seems kind of funny and quirky, but it was something that every week that they could do to have a little bit of control. Another thing is we had a family that decided that they were going to try to drive to State Park every weekend and have a picnic. And they're like, it's an hour drive there. We're there for an hour walking around. We eat for an hour drive back. That's, a whole morning into the afternoon. So kind of trying to control, have some control and some sense of normalcy. adding structure can really help too. So even though maybe you're not at school or you're not at work and you're at home, still setting your alarm and getting up at a certain time, making your coffee or whatever your morning routine was, and starting your day. So it doesn't have to be 8 a.m. I do this, 9 a.m. I do this. It's more, get into the habit of, okay, I'm going to make my coffee. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to check emails from 8 to 9. And then I'm going to check back, other reports 11 to 12, kind of adding certain times to check in to structure and control what you can. And then not being afraid to ask for help. And I know right now it's not, help is never easy to ask for, and not everybody has somebody. But even if asking for help is just asking somebody to commiserate, that you love being home with your kids and the extra time, but it is hard to do all day. I have a friend that's pregnant and she can't go, she can't go anywhere or do anything. So that's really hard for her. So she wants to call and just kind of have someone to listen to. Asking for help could mean, can you just sit inside with the kids for a few minutes while I go sit on the porch? Something small, but trying to make time to do the things that kind of help you be a better parent and a better caregiver. It's really hard to manage stress during this time. So, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do in the moment to get by. And that's where it comes in again, not being perfect. With the kids, any kids, remember that any of that like problem behavior or difficult behavior you might see is them trying to communicate something. So again, this is frustrating for us. It's going to be frustrating for kids. They might be saying, I don't like this. I don't understand. I need help. I don't want to do this. So again, with how we talked about that bike example, where you don't want to be reprimanding them or telling them what a terrible job they're doing, not learning to ride their bike. Understand that maybe this behavior is uncharacteristic, but they're going through a lot of changes right now too. And we don't have answers for them. We feel the stress, so understand that difficult behavior can be communicating something. So you're going to want to use, antecedent strategies like you normally would. Social stories, use first then, tell kids what's going to happen. Today we are going to stay home because it's raining. You would tell them something like that, so you can see, there are still people that are really sick, so we have to stay home to be safe. Kind of priming them for what's happening. Let them know of transitions that are coming up. Let them know if there's going to be something different. Okay. Be supportive of the kids and then reinforce the positive things that they're doing. A good rule of thumb, and this is really hard sometimes, but is to give 80% positive reinforcements or statements to 20% negative. So for every 10 things you tell a child during the day, if you make 8 of them positive, they're going to do a lot better accepting that criticism. And it also helps highlight the good behaviors that you're seeing. So if they're following directions, if they're sitting and attending to school, we're highlighting, hey, you're doing a great job sitting down, versus constantly tell them you're not doing work, we're being positive. That's going to help a lot. And then model the behavior you want your children to see. If you seem angry and upset, they're going to feed off that and they're going to model it. So I know it's not always easy, but try and show your children how you want them to act in this time. If they're seeing you handle something stressful and you kind of take it with a grain of salt and model that we can solve problems, they're going to pick up on that and they're going to try to do this. It can be really, really hard to do all of this. So I use the airplane example of putting your own mask on first. It's really hard to take care of kids, parents, anybody that you're caring for, if you aren't taking care of yourself first. So just like on a plane, if the oxygen mask drops down, you have to put on your own before that you can help someone else, because if you don't have yours on and you pass out, there's nothing you can do. So this is just like that. You need to make sure that as caregivers and family members that you're addressing your own needs too. Obviously, we want to care for our children. We want to take care of our kids, young adults. We want to take care of everybody in our family. But we can't do that if we're not taking care of ourselves. So this is kind of one of those things that can sound a little bit corny, but take time for yourself. Even if that means just setting your alarm a few minutes earlier in the morning. Get up and you have 5 minutes of quiet before the chaos of the day starts. Even if you're just laying in bed, scrolling through your phone, if you jump up and you read a few pages from a book or just go have a seat outside, open a window, have a cup of coffee, whatever it is, that 5 minutes can really make a difference. try to pick one thing a day you do for yourself. So maybe it's, you're going to reward yourself with a special dessert, or, you're going to go, like I said, in the morning and have your coffee alone. You're going to take a shower while somebody watches the kids. Just pick one thing, big or small, to kind of do for yourself. If it gets too hard, try to take a breather. I know not everybody has support, but if you do, this is a really great way to, to think about it, is when you have an infant, that's hard. That infant stage is really hard. And some kids cry and have, it's hard. I'm going to say it. But they always say that if you're frustrated, to put the baby in their crib, keep them safe, and then just go outside for a few minutes. And this is the same kind of thing. If it's getting really hard, call someone you trust. See if someone can just watch the kids. Or, if they're being safe in the yard, maybe, you're standing on the other side of the yard, kind of taking that breather for yourself, because it can be difficult to be home all the time. Have someone that you trust that you can reach out to. And I know that now, everyone's following their own personal safety, measures of if they're seeing people, if they're not seeing people, but try to have somebody that you can talk to. And, maybe it doesn't even have to be talked to about about the kids or what's frustrating you, but just about yourself. Like, I had a rough day and I just needed to vent, something like that. And then this is the one I always teach kids as well, but use positive self-talk. Every day you're doing something really hard. You're waking up, you're taking care of a child with special needs, and that is tough. It's tough to take care of a kid, period, in this time. So even by doing that, you have done something incredibly hard. So just remember to tell yourself that, like, you made it through the day and you took care of somebody. And I hear this a lot, like, it's hard to take time for myself. And I agree, I'm the same way. But just remember that a few minutes a day can be helpful. There are tons of meditation apps. There's YouTube videos, they're 5 minutes long, of deep breathing you can do right before sleep, just something to kind of center yourself. And other really good ways to kind of take the time for yourself are to incorporate your preferences into daily routines. So we do this with kids all the time. If they like PJ Masks, I'm going to make sure that I'm incorporating PJ Masks into all of their therapy, so that they're excited about it. So through this, you could do this for yourself. And you can include your children. Taking time for yourself doesn't necessarily mean that you're excluding your kids. So I really like hiking and I like camping. So I'll go hiking. I'll try to go once a week. And I'll take my son with me. And, maybe I don't get to hike as far and it's not the same, but I'm doing something that I enjoy and he's still there and I'm still being a mom. And the last thing that we always tell families is get outside. It's easy to stay inside and kind of, jump onto a screen, but kind of walking away from the house or just going outside for a few minutes can be really cool. So I'm going to open up to questions, but I did want to ask some questions that were sent to me ahead of time. So this is one that I love because I feel like this is something that a lot of families are facing. So how do I balance remote schooling and working from home at the same time? So the first thing that I would do is talk to your supervisor and let them know the situation. I want to say that people are being really accommodating right now, but just not everybody is. And I think the hybrid learning model is one of the things that is really going to throw people off. So how are you supposed to have childcare or, deal with work if you are working, your kids are home 3 days a week or at school 2 days a week? Like, that's not a normal schedule. And even daycares don't normally have programs for school-age children during the day. So that's really hard. So talk with your supervisor and see if there's anything you can do. If you have younger children that are still napping or have, like a rest, or even older kids, in that early school age, maybe first, second, third grade, they can have a rest period. Try and take advantage of that. Try and, if they sleep late, try and get some work done in the morning, get some done during nap time. Again, if they're older, kind of send them into the rooms to play for some rest time. Stick to a schedule or routine. One of our families, they kind of worked it out. It was a long conversation with, mom, dad, both of their employers, where mom moved to like a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. schedule, and dad moved from, he was doing like a 12 to 7 to kind of make sure that there was always someone who can cover the kid. But try to stick to a schedule. So things are going to be really, really difficult. Something that was really helpful for me, and I know this is different for everybody, was that I did get up, I set my alarm, I got dressed for the day, I came in and I did my work, and I got started on it right away. And that way, when something came up and I had to walk away from, the computer for a while, or I had to reschedule something, I at least got some of it done in the morning. And then try to use your resources. So if you have someone else at home with you, if you have older kids, if your child really likes watching movies, and I know that sounds like a bad parenting thing to do, but that's something that they can earn. They do their schoolwork in the morning and they have lunch. And if they earn 3 tokens for participation in school, for eating nicely, and, for getting along with their siblings, then maybe they can earn, a YouTube video or a movie or something that they can engage with to give you a little bit of a break. But the number one thing that I would definitely say is to kind of talk with your employer, see if there's any way that they can work out like an alternative schedule where maybe you're working earlier mornings or later evenings. Obviously, that's not like the best solution, because remote schooling isn't just you can sit on your computer and do your work and your child's going to sit there and do their work. A lot of our kids, from K to 12 are going to need somebody sitting there helping them attend. So it's really just a conversation that you need to open up with your supervisor and let them know what those expectations are. And I think that the schools, switching in between hybrid and in-person and fully virtual, having that option is really going to throw this off. So if there's any way that you can try to plan for the, first 9 weeks at least, or the first half of the year, that would be something I would consider as well. This is another great question. Teaching children to take proper precautions such as social distancing, wearing a mask, not touching their face. Practice, practice, practice. The mask thing is brand new for everybody. And as an adult, I'm used to it now, but when I first did that, I didn't like the tugging on my ears. And there's a lot of sensory things that go on with the mask. So try, if they don't want to wear a mask and they have to, try different fabrics, try ones with loops. They have ones that tie. They just had that study that those gaiters don't really work, but see if they'll wear that. Sometimes you have to do what works. And sometimes your kids aren't going to wear a mask, and that's okay. So practice what you want them to do. Explain why they're doing it. The not touching the face thing is probably the hardest one, because I find it hard for me. So that's why it's really important to practice washing hands, sanitizing frequently throughout the day. You're going to want to model that stuff for your children. If you are telling them that they have to be socially distant and they have to space themselves out from friends at school, you want to make sure that you're not, that you're not going over with the neighbors in a big group where they can see you doing that. You want to model that you're being safe as well. Make sure that you're having open discussions with your teachers and therapists. So, obviously schools have expectations in place, or they have these guidelines, but find out how they're going to be enforced. Something that we're doing for our kids in our therapy sessions is we're breaking it down into smaller steps. So, having them touch the mask, they're used to us wearing them by now, but now we're doing, today we worked with a kid where they would ask for their favorite toy, and we'd have them practice with the mask for 5 seconds, and then they would get rewarded with this toy every single time. And we're slowly building it up because this is brand new. Same thing with hand washing, and same thing with social distancing. So you're going to want to make sure that you can maybe work it into a routine, or work it into, their educational programming or something like that, because it does seem like this is something that's going to stick around for a little while. So it doesn't hurt for them to be able to do it. And then for kids, not touching their face, again, is so hard. So just make sure you're constantly practicing hand washing, and then reinforce when they're doing it. Even if your child will only put on the mask for a few minutes, even if they, are missing spots on their hands when they're washing, if they're standing 4 feet away instead of 6, those are things that can be shaped and taught, but just make sure that you're reinforcing their attempts. How can I manage multiple children of different ages learning remotely? I think that this is tough. So again, designate areas in your home that are learning. And this can be in the same area, obviously. You don't have to have a separate place for each child. Again, you're going to want to set a schedule and communicate with your teachers. And then something that we have really been encouraging family to do is set up lockers, or have a bin for the kids for their materials. So you can get them involved and kind of have them buy into it a little bit, get them excited by having them decorate it. We had some younger kids who had bins and they were putting stickers on it, making it their own. Some of the high schoolers kind of hung pictures on it like they would in their locker. So it's kind of like their special place for their materials. And that's their designated school supplies. So that kind of helps set it up as school, getting them a little bit more excited. Set expectations for your children, and then find out from your teachers, what are the expectations? If you have kids that are supposed to be online at the same time, that's going to be hard. I had a family who said that, so they had 4 kids, and they have 2 computers, and they don't have Chromebooks at their district, and they wanted them all on at the same time. That's not manageable. So they need to talk to the school and see, what is reasonable. Again, you're going to want to use a lot of reinforcement. And then if you can have older children help the younger children, or you can have, one of the kids taking a break while you're working with the other one, or having them engage. Those are the types of things that I would recommend. With the kids of any age, getting them to buy into it is going to be a big part. So that's why we encourage the lockers. One family had their kids sit down and do school pictures because they started their remote learning last week. So they had them do, their first day of school pictures and things like that. This is going to be really hard for families, and I don't have a lot of better suggestions other than kind of trying to work with the schools to see, because if they're doing that synchronous or scheduled learning times, that will be really hard with multiple children, especially if you're trying to prompt them through it. But if it's something where you have a little bit of flexibility, try and have them doing one kid doing some more of the independent work that they can do, or the interactive activities, while you're helping with the less interactive or a task that needs more one-on-one support. And then this is another one. This is a big one for all kids: the regression and socialization and social skills. So we push this with our kids so much. We want them to be social. We're trying to teach them to engage with other kids. And, kids naturally, typically developing children naturally want to be with other kids. And so socialization is something that, we're just not seeing with kids anymore. Maybe you're lucky enough to have siblings or cousins, but this is something that I think all parents worry about. And we're seeing in our sessions is that there is kind of a skill regression here. So just practice at home. Just because they don't have peers doesn't mean that you can't be a good conversation partner, or you can't practice sharing or turn taking with playing a game. So try and set aside time. It doesn't have to be direct instructional time. Right now we're going to work on social skills, but time where you can sit down and play a board game. They have great cooperative games now, especially for the younger kids, or maybe some kids who have some skill deficits. But Peaceable Kingdom is a brand of board games where it's cooperative. So you're all working towards the same goal. So it's easy to help each other out, and turn taking is really nice in those games. So maybe on Thursday it's game night, and we're going to sit down and you're going to practice turn taking, having a child request a turn, having them request pieces that they need, pointing to something on the board, asking them colors, things that you would naturally see kids learning in a group. That's going to be a lot on the family now. You're going to want to make sure you set reasonable expectations. So obviously, if you see the skill regression, just know that other kids are going to have it as well. We would never expect somebody to come out of this and be doing everything perfectly as they were doing it before without practice. Zoom and FaceTime, not a really natural way to kind of engage with peers, but a good way to call a friend or a family member and say hi, and practice a greeting, or answering getting to know you questions, or practicing a reciprocal conversation. So kind of trying to practice those skills. If you have a copy of your child's IEP and they have socialization goals in there, look at that and see how can you incorporate that into their day. I'm sure that your speech pathologists, intervention specialists, classroom teachers would all be willing to help come up with some suggestions for how to practice those at home. So this is just something that I think, I don't want to say it's not a big deal, because I think that this is. I think it's really awkward to not be social. And we see it now with our kids coming into their therapy sessions. We used to do small group activities and things like that, and we can't do it. And they're sad, It might be someone that our initial goal was for them to just greet a peer, or, wave hi to somebody. And now they can't go in the same room with them. And whether they were going to play together or play near each other, they're missing out on that. So just incorporate it however you can. Another really good suggestion that we've got from a family is that the parents learned kind of their child had a really restricted interest, and the parents kind of read up about it. So even though they weren't getting to socialize with peers and they weren't getting that practice, they were able to kind of talk to mom and dad, and it was a really reinforcing way for them to kind of practice that conversational skill with their mom and dad. So that was kind of cool because, you know, a lot of people wouldn't think about like using that in that way, but it helped practice a lot. There was another question that I got ahead of time that I meant to talk about when we talked about school, but it asked if we thought that special education services should be provided in person. And this is a really hard question. I think that, again, this is kind of a family decision and what would be best for each child. Personally, I mean, I guess I'm biased, but I do think that, you know, if special education services are able to be done in person, again, you know, barring, you know, any virus or, you know, family concerns, I think that that's something that should at least be offered. Some of our kids are going to have a really hard time attending virtually, and that's a lot for parents. You know, I see my sister's a teacher, and, you know, she's with her kids, they're not in the age group that she's used to teaching, so that's very different for her. So to send all the kids home and then automatically, you know, parents are becoming teachers, therapists, and speech pathologists, and occupational therapists, those things are really hard. I think that there's a huge benefit to our kids learning in a naturalistic environment. So I hope that schools are taking into consideration the needs of individual children versus, you know, like just generalizing all kids with IEPs. Obviously, there's kids with medical concerns, and they should, you know, parents should definitely have the option to send them in, but I think that it should be an option to send them. I hope that makes sense. I think it's really important for a lot of our kids to have that like interactive face-to-face time versus screen. And that was the last question that I had sent to me. So I don't know. I think
that was a huge reminder of all the things that I know in the back of my mind, but are very difficult for me to remember to do. And I know for myself, I'm mom to twin boys that are 18. One has autism, cerebral palsy, and epilepsy. So it's been a very difficult decision for myself. But I think one of the things that, as I'm going back to the school as well, what you talked about as far as the communication with teachers, and really, especially during this shutdown time, I know for my own son, I've seen some interesting and positive things come out of it, but at the same time, we've kind of regressed into some behaviors or a new behavior that I didn't anticipate. And so really trying to explain to teachers, you know, what you've seen positive and negative over the summer and during the shutdown is going to be really helpful, so that everybody can work together.
Yeah, and it's a lot of kids are switching teachers too that maybe weren't going to before, just they were redoing preschool or staying in the same class, something like that. And so it might be people that are brand new to the kids now too.
Absolutely. Just in our chat over here, we do have one person who wants to know if the presentation will be available to print. So
yep, I can share that.
We'll send that out kind of as a follow-up with maybe some additional resources and links for you when we're ready to post the webinar tomorrow. And then, yes, one parent has mentioned CADA as far as, yes, they are the Center for Applied Drama and Autism. They are awesome and a good way to get your kiddos engaged with other kids in a dramatic, I don't know what it is, but my own son, if he has a script, he becomes a new person. So it's very entertaining to watch. The only thing is then he wants to be the director and tell everybody else what to do. So, you know, but that's a great resource too. Also, for anybody who needs some respite time, we still have that Take a Break program. So if you need some help with a gift card to Walmart or Giant Eagle for $35, we've got that. And you can also get 3 hours of respite pay. So you like the rest of us, we like to hire people that we trust. And so sometimes that's grandma, or sometimes that's older sister, but it's nice. We do offer a 3-hour pay to someone of your choice for respite, so that you can get away or maybe do something with one of your other children, whatever that looks like. So please take advantage of that as well. And that's on our website, and I'll put that in the email to everyone. So thank you again, Chiara. That was wonderful. And
yeah, thank you.
If you don't mind, can I put your presentation in the email I send out? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. All right, everyone, we thank you for being with us, and we hope that you stay safe. Let us know if there's anything we can do for you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. We're doing Carrie Agins again. She's a special education attorney, and she's going to do the last of our 3-part series about things we should look at for special education specifically. So join us then, and until we see you again, stay safe. Bye.